Okay, so let's get down to business to defeat the Huns. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to Gamestate episode 7. It is Monday, August 27th, and today we are going to talk about Star City Denver, Standard and Legacy, and GP Boston. I am your host, Adam, a winner is you, Ragsdale, and with me we have in the red corner, Stephen Flavel, Poker Pro and Magic Enthusiast.
Yes.
In the blue corner, Glenn Jones, Event Coverage Manager for Star City Games.
Woo! I like the corner color coordination.
And in the pink corner, not yet here, but arriving in hopefully 15 to 20 minutes, Magic professional Cedric Phillips, who, as you can see, is static right now in our broadcast, but he will be here. So we're going to begin without him, and we will patch him in once he arrives. But the first thing we're going to talk about, Cedric will not have much knowledge of because he was off in the wilds of Boston. Our first topic is Star City Denver, and we will begin with the standard, where the top 8 was 4 Delver decks, 1 mono black trading post deck, 1 green-white mid-range deck, and then 2 other things which escape me off the top of my head. The first thing we're going to talk about is green-white, I guess, because it won the tournament and murdered everyone in somewhat surprising fashion. Let's go to Steven first. Steven, how do you feel about Accelerated Horse?
Man, we should reference the last segment where we said that Accelerated Horse wasn't very good.
It was
so
like
go back.
Yeah, it was like
We're gonna send you
2 to 3 weeks ago, I think it was, that this... Did it win the last Star City Open that it top-8'd, or...?
It was there.
I don't think it.
I think we are sort of in agreement here on Gamestate. This deck is not very good, doesn't do anything better than other decks who are already doing it, and that you shouldn't play it at standard tournaments. But yeah, I guess it can kill you sometimes accidentally. It just sort of incidentally happens when you put Elves and Heroes of Bladehold and other aggressive cards in your deck, but sometimes you win games. Helps if your opponent mulligans 3 times.
Yeah, I'm gonna chuck to Glenn in a second, because I know Glenn was actually there and can perhaps give us the down and dirty, but my impression is that it's like a fine deck, very solidly tier 2, but probably not the best thing in the format, and I wouldn't recommend it independently to someone unless they really powerfully loved playing green-white. In which case, go to, man. Accelerate your horse. So, Glenn, you watched it murder everyone. It did, in fact, win the tournament. Do you have any fascinating stories about its top 8 voyage?
I know I personally would not be caught dead playing this deck in a standard event, and it's not just because I enjoy playing decks that aren't this deck, but also I agree I don't think it's especially strong against any given field. I'm trying to think, just looking at the deck, I'm who do I want, especially with this particular version. I could see maybe a more Silverheart heavy version, and I'm yeah, let's beat up some ramp decks today. But that's not what this deck's doing. It's more hedging against everything to try and get to 45%, and it's not doing anything unfair to do any of that stuff.
Trying to get to 45%.
Yeah, it's just super miserable. This isn't Stoneblade and Legacy. When you win, it's not impressive. It's whew, that hero got there. That was lucky. I do think the way Michael described it, talking to him in the post-tournament interview, was he tried Naya aggro, which I also think is a real crap deck. So he was well, I didn't like that deck, so I built this deck, and I'm okay, I can get behind that. This does look better than Naya aggro. At least you're not gonna lose to your Copperline Gorges randomly when you're trying to play 4-drops all the time. But yeah, I'm still not a huge fan, especially because Gutshot's so well positioned right now, and swords are not a great plan in general. Michael was siding them out after almost every game 1 against the Delver decks, just hoping they'd bring in bricks to try and fight him, and I guess it kind of worked. I don't recall if the Delver players actually drew answers to his swords, but for the most part in the semifinals and finals, Michael just ran either really good or average, and his opponents ran really terrible. I know his opponent mulled a 4 in the finals in game 1, and I actually think that the Delver player could have won that mull of 4 because Michael's keep was really loose. He got probed on turn 1, so you can see it in the footage when it goes up, but it was like 5-land Hero Bladel Thragtusk. I'm pretty sure one of the lands was a Gabney Township, so I mean we can give him that, you know. Yeah.
Would you rate this above or behind Brad Nelson's 0-land keep get probed on turn 1 in the GP like 2 months
I
ago?
mean, if I know my opponent's playing Delver, I will never ever keep that 7 on the play. If they mulligan, I'm still probably not keeping it. Like, it's just so miserable against any real handler. If you tell me he's mulliganing to 4, then I probably keep it. I would be legitimately concerned about keeping that hand against the mull to 5 from Delver, though. Like, it doesn't take much to beat it. It takes, like, a turn 1 Delver, a Mana Leak, and a Geist. Like, these are the very small things that could just, like, accidentally kill you. Like, they don't have to try hard at all. The hand actually has no way to stand up to a Pike on anything. Like, Pike on Snapcaster is problematic. Like, and that's the worst thing that you can do as like a Delver of Secrets deck is like Pike a Snapcaster and try to beat to death the green-white deck filled with random dudes. But it doesn't even have dudes. Like, and does, you know, nothing. As we all know, obviously, like he did win that game and managed to win the tournament. So kudos. But I don't think I would be recommending green-white for future events. But that was true last week too. So you know.
Yeah. I don't want to spend too much time on this deck because I think we've been here before and like we'll probably be here again. It's playable, but it's not like exciting in any way. I just say that in a metagame where Delver players are playing like almost uniformly 4 gut shots on their main deck, a deck that like needs to have elves on turn 1 to do anything that's good is not really where I would want to be. And if I were doing that, this is not the deck I would play. Like I would be playing probably Niapod if I wanted to play an elf on turn 1 deck.
I did want to add one of the things that I found curious. I played against this deck on Moto, and it has a bunch of dismembers, and it's like really awkward when you draw multiple of them. And he's running dismembers, I assume, to kill like angels because I don't know what else you're dismembering really. But his deck is actually like totally fine against an angel. Like most of his creatures, if you are attacking with them, you're not that bugged about an angel when you have stuff like Rancor or if you had a gut shot. It's like your Blade Splicer tokens are fine against angel with a gut shot backing them. You don't have to dismember the angel. Like, you can just kill it that way. It's going to be about as good, and it's way better against Delver to have gut shots for those guys because Delver's a much worse angel deck than you are also. So I found that choice really peculiar, and he can even board up to like 4 dismembers, although I don't know what matchup you actually ever want to do that in. So, I mean,
so
do you?
Glenn is now participating in trying to get matchups to 45%? Is that...
No. I'm perfectly fine getting crushed sometimes and then beating the hell out of people the rest of the time. So.
All right. Fair enough.
We can play the like try and fight cards. Dismember is good against game. I've been playing that game on and off for months. It's pretty good against Hero Bladehold if you seriously think that's a thing that's gonna happen. I'm not sure how you could.
Like it.
Oh man. Yeah, I 4 is just so many. Like I'm just like staring at it now. I'm like, oh. Especially with your like Thalia sideboard plan, because like paying 2 mana for Dismember and 4 life is I am not in that game. That's not my market. Like,
One of our clever viewers in chat brings up that it's good against Infect, and I suppose that is true.
I mean, isn't Gutshot like also good against Infect? I mean, it's like
probably
slightly
better, yes.
I could see the argument for Dismember because you can kill through like Cathedral of War easier. Like they can use Cathedral of War to bait you into gut shotting early now. So like Dismember doesn't fall to that problem, but like I don't know, it feels pretty sketchy, just in general. Yeah.
All right, so let's move on. There were horses that were going fast. The other sort of interesting, quote-unquote, deck in the top 8 that wasn't the 4 Delver decks was the mono-black Trading Post deck, which I gather from the fact that there was an identical copy in the top 16 is a accepted deck list from some sort of article.
Are they actually? I think that's just a duplicate.
Yeah, I think they're the same 75.
Well, they're both also played by the same player.
Oh, really?
I think that may.
Oh, okay. So there weren't actually 2 of them. That makes me a little bit sad.
Yeah.
But anyway, there was mono black Trading Post. Resources were traded for goats. Different things occurred. How do you guys feel about trading things for goats? I guess we'll just go Steven then Glenn again. It's very sad when Sed's not here. Steven, goats.
Yeah. I mean, obviously the deck isn't good. Like, the one thing with the deck...
Obviously.
It's pretty obvious.
Does anybody, like, look at this list and think, yeah!
There's got to be someone, right? Like, I don't know Brad Nelson personally, but I heard he was really gung-ho about trading things for goats. Like, Glenn, you probably see him pretty regularly. Is this accurate?
It's very accurate that he does enjoy the goat business.
So, yeah. Clearly someone looks at the list and pumps the fist. It's just not us.
Someone out there? Alright. Well, like, the one positive thing I can say about this deck is that it's trying to do something different from the other decks in the format. And when you have, like, a new strategy, which other decks are not prepared for, you know, maybe you can take some people with their pants down, but I don't think it's very hard to, like, incidentally prepare for turn 5 Grave Titan. I think people accidentally do that quite a lot. So.
Okay.
One dismembered, two new.
Anyway, there's one of a lot of things in this deck.
Yeah, I don't know. I want to say something positive because I know you guys aren't going to have much positive stuff to say, but
I got a little.
All right, go for it, Glenn. Go for it.
Like I am not personally a huge fan of playing these kinds of decks in standard tournaments. Somewhere along the line, like I developed from that guy who likes to play control decks when I was trying to like qualify, and then became the guy who just likes to attack all the time, whatever I'm doing, just end the game as quickly as possible. And cat trolled. But like I can see the appeal of Trading Post in particular as a card in that, you know, people really like playing Magic, and sometimes they just like taking actions. And Trading Post, it's got at least 4 actions available at pretty much all times. And with all the other cards you've got in your deck, you know, you can do various things. And it's kind of enjoyable to watch, like carving up those crazy complicated lines where you're like looping metamorphs or like setting up Mimic Vat chains to try and eventually wind out certainty. I can get behind that. I like achieving certainty in very complicated ways. That's kind of fun. But I do agree that it's not really like, it's not the deck I would want to be caught playing if I were trying to win a tournament. If I was trying to have fun, I might play this deck, but I also might just play Commander, which this deck seems a lot closer to than a standard deck. And I think like that's true of most Trading Post decks. I'm not like knocking this particular build. It's just like most of them are trying to become like a Type 2 version of a Commander deck where it's like, yeah, look at me grind you out with all these things, and then I'm just going to do something awesome, and that's going to win the game. I like the, well, I don't know if I should say, but I was like, I scratched my head when I played against one of the red-green ones, which I hadn't seen before online, and then like I found out people were writing about it, and that was probably why I just randomly played against it. And like he did manage to kill me. I don't think he was supposed to in the match. Like it was really close. It went like super long in like every single game, which is obviously not favorable for me since I'm playing the Delver deck, but like it's also not favorable for him because we're playing like 3 games, and they all go long, and I can still kill him with like a lot of draws. So I don't know. I'm not a Trading Post guy. I can understand why other people are Trading Post guys, though. I can get that. And, you know, they're not going to get to do it for very much longer. I find it unlikely that card's going to be, like, Type 2 playable once all the Wellsprings and like, Talisman and Spellbombs are gone. That just seems like a lot to ask for.
That's going to be... It's going to be so brutal. Can you imagine playing that deck and not drawing, like, Acre Wellspring in your opening hand? What's going to hold it together?
Well, how are you going to draw another one? Yeah.
Yeah.
Your walking corpse.
Those decks are awesome because they always struck me as, like, they look a lot like the Tezzeret decks that used to exist, except they cut the Tezzeret, which was, like, the only way those decks could win. They're just like, oh, get this guy out, but, like, just shuffle in some... We can make goats, so there's... The other thing,
white goats. Oh.
Yeah, the other thing I wanted to mention was that when you see deck lists that have a million one-ofs, there's 2 responses basically that are possible. Either you look at the deck list and you're like, this is the ugliest thing I've ever seen. Clearly they just threw it together in the back of a truck, and then like registered it instantly and then they battled, or you're like, oh, they must have tested this format so much they've got it down to a T, which is generally what you hear like from say official coverage or something like that when they don't want to talk about how they threw the deck together in the back of a truck, and they're like. So if for example you look at a deck list and it looks like this and say Brian Kibler made it, people will say things like, well, he's got the format down. He knows you need exactly one Grave Titan and one Batter Skull and one this and one that. And I think it's interesting how you sort of get the one extreme and the other extreme, but you never get anything in between. Like you never get people who look at the deck list and they're like, I think it's all right. Yeah.
I don't know. I'm pretty in between. I think it's fine to play ones.
Like just a million of them.
I mean, I look at one Grave Titan and one Wormcoil engine, I just think, okay, you want 2 big 6-drops and play both.
I mean, like, you have to play at least one Wormcoil, right? So, like, talking to the guy, I actually did a deck tech with him, and he was like, I've got to... He runs the split, and he's like, the Wormcoil does most of the work because they get it back a lot, but then there are games against, like, green-white decks where he just plays like a Grave Titan, and there's nothing they can do about it at all, and it just takes over the game. So, I can see that. I don't mind a high impact. I don't mind running bullets that are high impact and powerful late in the game. The thing that actually strikes me the weirdest about the deck is like all the 3-ofs. Like, that sends off more alarm bells to me than 1-ofs, and maybe that's because I personally am like a bullet guy. I don't mind going, just play one of these, and when they lose to it, they'll be really mad. Like, that's kind of like my wheelhouse, but I can also see the stuff like the higher end guys being reasonable 1-ofs, because if you can hit one like over the course of a game while peeling off the top, it's not so bad.
All right. I wanted to hit the Delver decks really quickly just because it seems like there is consensus that 18 to 19 lands and Runechanter's Pike is what you want to be doing. Like, there were 4 deck lists, and I think they were all on the 18 to 19 land version, and the 22 to 23 version seems to have sunk into the tar pits. So I just wanted to know if you guys thought it was definitely like we all want to be doing that and beating people to death with pikes. Steven, you seem pretty positive. Is that how you feel?
Well, I mean, I've been yelling at people to do that for, quite a long time, so I'm pretty happy that they're doing it. I don't think that it's, like, the only way you can build a deck, and it's weird to me that now everybody's doing it, because you can build the deck the other way, but yeah, I think it's obviously a very powerful strategy. It's a lower take on the deck, kills people faster, probably better in an infect-oriented meta. I think infect existing sort of lower is where you want to be, so it's a good response to that. But I still think playing 22 to 23 is fine. Maybe like now I can start yelling at people to play more lands in their Delver decks. Maybe that's the next step.
You're just contrarian. That's.
I mean, I just think like you should have some of one, some of the other. It's just where you should be at. Yeah.
Glenn, any land-related thoughts?
Well, I can't remember who said it, but I know it was someone who's actually good at Magic as opposed to like me. But they were mentioning that Pike is like the best 4-drop in Delver right now, and I very much agree with that. I think that there are a lot of strengths with running the low land counts. We've already talked about how strong a deck Delver is in post-sideboarded games because it runs more spells and more ways to find all the good spells. So that's always nice. And running the lower land count, obviously, that just generally ensures that you're going to have more spells than your opponent when you're also playing such good ones. Like, you want to hit them. I'm not like vehemently against running more lands, like the hero list that some people are running, and even like I guess like older sword stalker lists are okay. But I've been playing Pike like exclusively for I can't even remember, like since the last like big tournament was won by Pike, like before, like shortly after M13. I can't remember when it was, but I just like doing that a lot. It's the easiest way to sneak wins. You can take down long games by just building towards a turn with Pike, and people just they tap out, man. Like sometimes they don't realize that just like 5 instants in the graveyard means their 15 life is not safe. Like you just end a turn, Thought Scour, untap like Pike, Thought Scour myself, ban. Like it happens.
Ooh.
Like it's not unrealistic
Shazam.
to get
You do
someone.
the sound effects?
That seems
So,
seems a little rude. I'd do sound effects if I was losing, but not if I was winning. That seems like sort of in poor taste.
I've been known to do them in both. I also sing sometimes, so yeah. If I do
uh,
ever start streaming, you'll get to hear me sing as I play, which is quite
the
a sight.
the biggest thing I think going a few lands higher has for it, there are a couple of things I will mention just briefly. I think that either take on the deck is fine, and I'd personally be playing the lower take. But I think you can definitely add more lands. And like first off, with all the like cantrips and ponders, especially, like you sort of get to choose which cards you draw a lot of the time. So you just ponder for spells instead of lands a little more often. And then post board, I think you get to go higher, which
Yeah.
gives you a little more like ability to adjust post board, which is something Delver's great at doing. So I don't think that going higher is super valuable in a lot of the matchups post board right now. So it's not that exciting, but I think that's one of the biggest things about the deck. Like, I don't actually think that changing land count matters that much when you have Ponder anyway. It's more about what you can do than what you will do regularly, which is pretty much going to be the same with either build. A little different, but mostly the same.
All right, let's get out of standard because I don't think too much super exciting happened there. We'll touch briefly on legacy, where the most exciting thing to me was that there were, depending on how you keep track, 12 or 13, 14, I think, if you count in an odd manner, distinct archetypes in the top 16 in the Star City Legacy tournament, which I think is awesome and shows how Legacy is. But that's about it. I mean, there's a million different decks, and they play Legacy, and they interact in weird ways. You guys have anything in particular to say about this particular Legacy top 8? Glenn appears to have muted himself.
Find your silence.
Ah, sorry. Yeah, there's the new Omnitele. I have a really loud keyboard, so I
Oh,
try and
yeah.
mute it when
Okay.
I'm typing, which I was doing, and then I sometimes forget because I am stupid. But the new Omnitel deck that was from Japan, and Jerry put it in our newsletter this week for SCG, and it top 4'd the tournament. I think it's very, very close, maybe identical to the one from Japan, but using like Academy Rector Cabal therapies and other neat shenanigans. So, I mean, I think that's like the only really unique thing that happened in this event. There was like, yeah, I mean, Painted Stone top 16, I guess. It hasn't done that in a while, but other than that, nothing else really happened.
I had a fun experience with Painted Stone. I played in the Legacy Championships at Gen Con like a number of years back after not having, like literally not having played a game of Magic in like 3 to 4 years and not paying any attention to what cards were printed. And someone played Painter's Servant and I had to run the like pick it up and read it and be like, I have no
Mm-hmm.
idea what this does. I was like, okay, so clearly some other card is going to happen and I'm going to die. And that's what happened. So it was, but it's confusing when your opponent plays a 2-mana 1/3 and you read it and you're like, okay, I guess. Also, my opponent named Blue, and then I got to force his Grindstone pitching a Crozen Grip, which was kind of a weird experience. But that's the sum total of my experience with Painted Stone.
Sure. I actually played the deck, like, that was the first Legacy deck I played any games with. Just because I was like, oh, this looks sweet, and Caleb was playing it at the time, and he like kind of sold me on it being a fun thing to do, and it was like I like to try and set up these intricate game states where I just like kill people in very little mana while intuitioning, so that's cool. That's fun.
Fair enough. Do you think the Rector version of Show and Tell is better than the other versions we've seen? Because we've seen a number of versions of Show and
Yeah.
Tell now.
As soon as Jerry showed me the Rector list at the office, I was like, this is cool, because like Cabal Therapy is an awesome card just in general to play with. Like, it's one of those cards. I'm pretty like feeling oriented in how I enjoy Magic, and when I get someone with a Cabal Therapy, man, it feels real good. So like, it's the same way like killing someone, like getting them for like 7 extra damage or killing them for Xaxes. I love to kill them for Xaxes. 7 extra damage, like that's whatever. Like, they were already dead. It didn't really matter that much. But when you get them for Xaxes, it feels nice. So I tend to gravitate towards decks that can do like those niche things, and that's one of the things I like about that deck is Cabal Therapy is excellent defense. It's both like a defensive play on to set up your combo, and then it's also like a combo enabler. So like every time you have a Cabal Therapy, you're just like, all right, I'm like halfway there because it'll just take care of most of the things you want to do. It'll strip them of their protection while playing like a probe to see if there's more protection you have to worry about. And then if there isn't, you just kill them with it. Like they're almost always dead. I think I saw the guy put Omniscience into play and then lose once, and admittedly that was awkward. But he did use it to cast a second copy of Omniscience, so that was, I guess, if you're going by the like mana theory of Magic, a pretty good use of the card. But other than that,
time loss.
yeah.
How many times do you think you would use the damn near killer pun if you were playing that deck, like per match? One?
Yeah, probably min one per match. I mean, unless if my opponent's being like really obnoxious, I might ratchet it up. You know.
All right. So situation specific.
Yeah.
I know.
Yeah, I like.
Oh, sorry.
List.
Go ahead, Steven.
I like this list, but I think that it's slower and less consistent. That's just my eyeballing on it.
I think like I agree it's slower. Like it doesn't kill or like kill by setting up like the combo on turn 2 or 3 as often as like other show and tell decks do. But I think the way it kills people is like much more resilient to all the things they can do. And there aren't a lot of people in Legacy who are trying to kill you faster than you're trying to kill them with this deck, which is a nice boon. And the people who are vulnerable to Cabal Therapies and Forcibles, which are also crunchy play. So
like that's the positive side. Like the negative side is slower, a little less consistent. The positive side is like it doesn't matter that you're slower and you cast Cabal Therapy while you're being a little slow and less consistent. So, I mean, that's fine.
I'm actually
slightly different.
I'm interested in the consistency argument because I haven't played the deck at all, obviously, but Living Wish gives the deck a ton of play that I didn't really expect. Like being able to go get specific lands like the Boseiju or the Cavern to like make sure Show and Tell or Rector, as the case may be, gets through, or even Phyrexian Tower if you can't get a Cabal Therapy. Although I didn't really see the Phyrexian Tower do a lot in the games I was watching. I think the Boseiju and the Cavern were like the best uses. Plus, it's obviously just like a copy of Emrakul when you're not doing any of those things.
Right.
I think that adds like a lot of play, which is really cool. When I first saw the deck list, like I kind of underestimated. I was more impressed seeing the guy Michael Svien play it in Denver. And, like I already thought it was kind of something I might want to play, and watching him play it, I was like, yeah, this looks pretty fun. So.
I saw it get into a couple awkward spots against extraction specifically, surgical extraction.
Yep.
Just like holding rectors, which if people don't know how that works, like when your rector dies, there's an opportunity for the opponent to surgical extraction it before you get to go get your Omniscience. And that's bad news bears. Do you think that's a problem? Because I don't think the other show decks suffer from that, really.
You're right that they don't suffer from that, but the deck can also kill without exposing Rector that way. Like you can just show into Omniscience or like into the actual Emrakul or whatever. Like that's a way to kill someone. So like it does get you, but it's kind of just weird. I don't know. I think he may have been able. I do feel inclined to point out like the game where he got double surgical, where Joe set him up, so to speak, in the third game. I think it was. He went for Rector with Force of Will, and Joe had double surgical to get him. Like he was still almost able to win that game by like Living Wishing for the fourth Rector and trying to go off again. But Joe like once again like had a counterspell, and I don't think like a counterbalance deck doesn't seem like a great matchup. If they can just keep a 2 on top, then they're like gonna very easily defeat you a lot of the time because they don't need much backup to stop you from comboing off if you can't cast your Living Wishes. So I think that the matchup was tough, but it went to 3 games and he was still playing Magic like the whole time. Like I was impressed by the durability. I thought he was gonna be like stone cold dead in a couple of those games, and he definitely like managed to get through it. He won like an incredible game in the quarterfinals where he was like hellbent against a Jace getting Fate Sealed and then just peeled 3 sicko runners and killed his opponent like very, very easily, which was super awkward. And Cabal Therapy like enabled him to do that, which, yeah, I mean, the deck plays better than it looks, I guess is like the best thing I can say about it. And I don't know if that's good enough, but I think it is probably better than like the Overmaster versions, which look good but not awesome, so to speak.
Fair enough. I think Cedric is sort of rooting around after having returned home. I saw him appearing online, so we should have him shortly. But just super quick before we get there, how do you feel about Cabal Therapy just as a card abstractly? Because I know people who really love Cabal Therapy and think it's like the best designed Magic card they've ever seen, and also people who hate Cabal Therapy and think it's an atrociously designed Magic card. I don't know if you know Dan Skinner, but I know that he like hates that card more than any other thing, which is saying a lot.
Why does he hate it?
A lot about it.
He hated, like, it was a pretty big part of Old Extended, just in, like, being around the format, and he hated that people could get you blind for 2 cards and the game was over, was his primary concern.
I mean, that's kind of like being mad that your pocket kings can lose to pocket aces, you know? Like, it's going to happen sometimes. Like, I don't know. I think it's like, I like the card. It rewards skill. It especially rewards, like, understanding the metagame. And I like cards like that. If you playtest, then Cabal Therapy is a much more incredible weapon for you than it is for other people. And those are the kind of cards I don't mind people playing with at all. Like, I watched, you know, one of those things happened on camera, actually, like Austin Yost playing to try and stay alive for top 8 against the Show and Tell deck. He got Cabal Therapy for Flame Rift and just lost 2 of them. And it's like, I mean, that's the highest EV burn spell that he decided to call there. Like, the only other choice that's remotely arguable is like Red Blast or Pyroblast, but he hadn't seen which one of those his opponent was playing, so might as well just take Flame Rift, right? Like, and that worked out for him.
Cedric's here.
Hi, Ced.
I'm pretty excited.
How was your?
Oh, Cedric's excited.
How was your flight?
The flight was fine. The taxi driver drove like a maniac, and then I drove like a maniac home, so it was good.
That's good. We're happy to see you, but not quite as happy as chat.
That's fair. That's fair. I'm out of breath because I had to run from up here, but let's do this. Keep the show going.
Yeah, so we just finished talking about Star City Denver, or at least I hope we finished. If anyone else has anything super exciting.
Let me say something about Cabal Therapy.
All right, you talk about Cabal Therapy, Steven. Let us know.
There was a legacy, like, ask quick questions, whatever it's called, and you asked people, like, how many mistakes you make per legacy match, and they're like, well, I make 3. And it pissed me off, because the way people think about mistakes in Magic is just wrong. Any, like, second that you were doing something in Magic which is not optimizing your chance to win the game in some way, you're playing wrong, and that's a mistake. So if you're like, I don't know if you want to like get into like string theory, like how long is an individual second of time, but you probably spend every single individual second of time wrong when you're playing Magic, like every single one. And Cabal Therapy is one of the few cards that actually makes that matter. Like, it makes it matter a lot, because you can give away like what's in your hand very, very easily while you're looking at your 7 cards to decide to mulligan. And Cabal Therapy is a card that like makes that matter. I think it really rewards people who play smart and read their opponents and don't give off tells and are able to discern what's in their opponent's hand, and that just makes me happy. I think it's a really good Magic card.
I agree very much so. Watching the finals actually play out, Joe is a really deliberate player, the counterbalance player who won the tournament, and a lot of his tanking, initially, like, watching the match, I was kind of concerned. I know Joe, like, I consider him a friend, and, you know, I was kind of rooting for him a little bit. And as he's, like, you know, tanking over responding to various cards his opponent has, I'm like, oh, man, like, he's giving away so much information to a deck that does nothing but play in flashback Cabal Therapy. This is horrifying. But he also mixed in some showboating. Like with topping, you know, in response to spells, especially with the counterbalance out, you know, like he'd tank for like a really long time, like trying to figure out where he wanted to bait his opponent, because like he'd be planning to cantrip the top into a play that turn or whatever. And a few of those, like I tried to ask him about it after the tournament, but he was so wiped, we didn't really get to talk about it. And I was impressed by those, which is also worth pointing out, like when you know your opponent has cards like that, you can manipulate them to make even more errors than they might make normally, which is, I agree with you, like a reason to play those cards. I think it was Mike Turian, like, who said like nobody ever played like a perfect game of Magic, something like that. And I very much agree with that. Like your body language and the speed at which you do things and all those kinds of things, just like there's no way you did everything right without giving away an ounce of information. Even if your opponent wasn't good enough to pick up on it, like you still did it wrong. Like that just happened.
Yeah. I'll just say that Cabal Therapy is actually one of my favorite Magic cards of all time. Like, so that's sort of where I stand on it. I think it's awesome.
I'm gonna let you finish, but I just.
Yeah. You don't deserve that Grammy or whatever it was.
I think it was a
Yeah.
Grammy.
Yeah.
She deserved it. She's fantastic.
I'm glad to have you
Good.
counterbalancing Kanye on our show, Sed.
That's why
My
I'm
sister
here.
makes career choices based on the likelihood that they will lead to her meeting Taylor Swift. So this is like a sad moment for me right now.
That's
I'm
awful.
hearing it from Cedric too.
That is terrible. Are you kidding me? Hey. I'm gonna jump in real quick too, because I know that you guys are probably closing on Denver really quick. But Glenn, you just said that about Joe.
Mhm.
Just like I know him as well. I know he's a California guy. Came out to the Denver tournament. He's really good. So
He is.
when I found out this morning that he won the tournament, I wasn't surprised at all. He always plays this kind of deck and always plays it relatively well, so I wasn't terribly shocked to see him playing this. It's obviously a different take on like Stoneforge or Blue-White Control or what have you, and Steven, I know you talked about this a little bit last week about like there should be a control deck, like some sort of control deck like this being the best deck in Legacy, and that's, I mean, you predicted it and it won, so. Well done.
Oh, thanks for reminding me. I feel
Well
awesome
done
now.
as usual.
Glad I did that.
Aren't you glad I'm here?
Man, I'm
little like
smart.
this action here.
Yeah. So Adam, continue on. I just wanted to drop
Yeah.
that in.
No problem. So we're gonna mosey along to GP Boston, I think, which is sort of the big story of the weekend. Before we get to specifics of the wonders accomplished by one Cedric Phillips, I just want to talk about the tournament in general. It was M13 Limited, which means there was a real big sealed tournament on day one, and then 2 pods of draft, 3 if you made the top 8 on day 2. And one of the things I wanted to talk about was the just sort of the general way in which one builds either a sealed pool or a draft pool in M13 Limited, and the different ways you can go about doing that and how you're likely to encounter more success versus where maybe you'll run into a bit of difficulty. I heard from the ultra-reliable source of the coverage that plains and forests are very popular in sealed, and mountains and islands are not so popular. So I wanted to open it up to you guys. What do you, in broad strokes, what are you expecting to do in, say, a sealed format in M13 versus a draft format? And how do you get a leg up on the competition? I'll start with Seth, I guess, since he's the most exciting person to talk about this, and then we can go from there.
Building a draft deck versus a steel deck is a pretty big difference. For sure, of course. They're pretty different formats, even though you're playing with the same cards. The way that I build sealed, personally, is just, unless the format is hyper-aggressive like Zendikar was, I'm looking to build a deck, hopefully, that can draw first, has some removal, has some good creatures, game can go out longer, and then my better cards can take over, or possibly my skill advantage can take over. I did actually find that a lot of people, like you said in the coverage thing, Islands and Mountains were the least played, like, for sure. So that was definitely interesting. I was playing green, red, splash white, so, and most of my opponents were too. So, I mean, it's hard for me to put into words, honestly, just because I'm just so used to how I build steel decks versus how I build, like, my draft decks and what I'm trying to accomplish in both of the formats. But yeah, I mean, sealed, you want the game to go slower. Like, the only way that you can build a very, like, powerful, aggressive steel deck is if, like, the cards are there. You can't go in hoping to build a steel deck that's just going to attack them as fast as you can and kill them. Whereas in draft, like, that's kind of a strategy. Or, drafting a control deck is kind of a strategy. In sealed, you're kind of more mid-rangey, which is not where you want to be when, like, in constructed, of course, but you just don't want to be really mid-rangey in general. But in sealed, you, like, want to be mid-rangey and let, like, you have the opportunity to draw your better cards and do that sort of thing versus playing, like, Silvercoat Line, and trying to kill them as fast as you can, and then they play a 3/3 and you're like, I have Silvercoat Lions. So That's just sealed in general. It just takes practice to learn that kind of thing. But I think it's no different from like a normal sealed format versus a core set format. There are exceptions to the rule, like Zendikar block, like M12, which had the Bloodthirst mechanic. So Bloodthirst is a more aggressively printed mechanic. But overall, I think that's what you're trying to do in sealed deck. And I think that when you're trying to do that in sealed deck, green, white, and white cards lend you to do that the best in M13. So I think that's why those are the most popular colors.
Do you have anything to add, Glenn?
Yeah, I agree with a lot of what Cedric said. Especially the deck building considerations with how you want to include cards in your deck. I think the idea, at least an idea I've always used to guide me in sealed deck building in normal formats, not like crazy Zendikar or even the M11 or whatever to some extent. But I look at the card and I think like, would I be mad to draw this on like turn 4? And like if I would be, then I'm kind of like questioning whether it should be in my deck. Like Silvercoat Lion, I'm very unlikely to be happy to draw Silvercoat Lion on turn 4 in like any situation. Like Aven Squire, okay, now we might be a little more interested. Mog Flunkies is one of those cards where it's like back and forth, but its power level is like curving way higher. Like when my Silvercoat Lion on turn 2 is good, it's pretty good. When my Mog Flunkies like goes unchecked, it's like awesome. It's gonna kill them. Like the Silvercoat Lion's gonna deal like 4 to 6 damage and then become completely stone irrelevant for the rest of the game. So I think those are like good comparisons to make. And I agree you want to think about how your deck wins. It's really difficult to like achieve certainty in sealed, but you can build to beat your opponent's best cards because a lot of their cards are going to be bad. It's not uncommon to like hear people talk about sideboarding into completely different decks when faced with specific opponents. One of my favorite tweets like that I got to see from the GP Boston weekend was Raptor talking about some guy who had like 4 murders or something that he played against, and he sided his deck in a completely different colors to play like a bunch of hexproof guys and try and kill him that way. And like if your opponent just draws these awesome murders that actually don't have text because they don't kill the relevant creatures, that's pretty good. I mean, card didn't have that much text to start with, so 3 words. So yeah, it's all about card value, and you want to grind the value instead of trying to just play a trump. I mean, if you have an awesome bomb, then yeah, like by all means, just try and kill them with it. That's a pretty reasonable play. The format has some amount of card selection. I think it's pretty forgiving to mulliganing in general. Like the games don't end super fast, so if you can get into a late game situation, if your cards are better, you'll still be okay, even if you're down a couple. I don't know if you agree with me on that one, Cedric, but that's kind of how it felt to me. Like I didn't mind as long as I got to play Magic. I felt like I was playing Magic. So.
All right, Steven, do you have any wisdom to impart?
Like one mechanical thing is on Moto you can save your deck list, so you can actually build different decks out of your sealed pool before you start the tournament and just like press load and load it in sideboarding. That's a really cool thing to be able to do and keep that in mind because there's no reason you can't build multiple different sealed decks and sideboard into one. And yeah, I feel like people splash a ton in sealed for like decent to good removal, and the math is just way, way worse on that than people realize. And so like I'm not gonna like spurt off on the math for you guys right now, but if you're like really into splashing for 2 Searing Spears, like maybe do the math and look at how much it's actually making you mulligan and how much it's making you miss casting spells and stuff. Because I think it's a lot more than you realize. That's my wisdom.
Okay. Do you guys want to talk about draft independently? Because it's obviously a completely separate format than sealed.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, sure.
Okay. I know that said you went sort of on the record on coverage as saying that you hated white cards after drafting 3 white decks in a row on day 2. So I'm excited to hear your fascinating theories on the format.
I promise I'm not lying.
So Seth, why don't you walk us through our drafting with the pros M13 section? We can go from there.
Well, for M13, I have my own preferences on what I like to do, what I don't like to do. I think the consensus opinion among players that people respect is that green is probably the best color. People like black a fair enough amount. red is more of a splash color unless like you're a mono red deck. Blue is fine, but a lot of people really don't like blue very much. And then white is fine, and I despise white. There are color combinations that work and don't work. I think that if you're blue-green, you're in bad shape because, of course, blue-green has no removals, so you can't deal with a very good creature. You can't deal with a sentinel spider. You have to unsummon it, what have you. You're in bad shape that way. The best color combinations that most people that I have found and most people like, black, white, exalted. That one jumps out very quickly at everyone. Red-black aggressive deck is very popular. Tormented Souls, Volcanic Strengths. Don't get me started on that. At least not yet. People actually kind of do like white-green as well, just because the green creatures are awesome, and then the white cards have the removal for you. And then, the cool thing about this format is that there's a lot of ways you can go. You can end up with a mono red deck. You can end up with a mono green deck where you're playing 16 lands and a bunch of Arbor Elves. There's a lot of diversity in what you can do in the format, which is really, really nice. I think the one thing that you can take away from it is, like, the only deck that, like, you don't want to draft is blue-green, because you just can't beat any of their guys. You just have to stay as far away from them as possible. Unless you have, like, 2 sleeps, I think that's the only way that you can draft the deck, because you're just going to get in board stalls and you just have no way to get through except for, like, running your idiot into their idiot and just hoping something goes well. But part of the reason that everyone enjoys this format, myself included, is that you can really combine any color with any color. You can be mono-colored. You can actually be 3-colored if things break your way between, like, Divinations and Farseeks. There's a lot of things that you can do, which is really unique for a core set. So.
All right. Glenn, do you have anything to add?
Draft is the M13 format I have, like, the most experience with, I guess. With M13, I haven't played a lot of sealed. I've mostly just, like, watched people sealed. And I do like how a lot of the colors, like, everything's kind of playable. You have to go in knowing what you're doing. Sam kind of spoiled it for some of us, I guess, with his article, which was really good on passing the cards that suck, even though you can play them. So, and it was funny, actually, the day after Sam's article went up, I got a Canyon Minotaur actual 14th in, like, a draft, like, almost immediately after. And I was just laughing, because I'm like, that had never happened before. Definitely never happened, but actual 14th pick Canyon Minotaur, and I was like, that sounds about right. People are just, and to be fair, like, you might be taking it a little farther away. Like, I'm not saying that you should be playing the Canyon Minotaur, but, like, did you really take a card that was, like, that much better than a Canyon Minotaur 13th, or, like, that was gonna make your deck better as opposed to, like, the risk of maybe I randomly get you with a Canyon Minotaur? I don't know. But I mean, like, obviously the card is not good, but at the same time, it's, it's no Angel's Mercy or whatever, so we can give it the respect it has earned, I guess. I especially like that M13 has way more playables than Avacyn Restored. I know a lot of people have touched on that in articles and stuff, but you can feel it in the drafts where, like, you're not just scrambling to try and make your deck work. You're like, oh, well, I tried to get white-red humans, and then I wound up in garbage pile.deck, like, just unplayable mess, nothing I could do, like, but you can usually make something happen in M13. I've color switched a few times, not for bombs necessarily, but just, like, reorganized the distribution I was planning to run, so stuff like that. I can also empathize with your comment on the white. It reminded me at Pro Tour Amsterdam playing in the... I went into the Pro Tour, and our plan, like, as a group, was to just avoid green at, like, all costs in M11, because that's, like, miserable.
Yes.
And then I died in the PT, and I went over to the Moto Live series, and I drafted nothing but green decks in every single draft of the Moto Live series, and nobody else was doing it. And, like, I just randomly ended up with these, like, semi-playable decks that were just getting there. And as I was doing it, I was just, like, shaking my head, because it's like, yeah, this is like a fitting cap to the weekend, really. Like, just nothing works. Everything's wrong. It's an upside-down world.
All right. Steven, I know you and I were talking the other day about how sad you were to see the exit of Merfolk Looter and Merfolk Looter related things. Do you have anything to say about M13 draft?
So in M12, I just drafted blue every single time because I always got 6-pick Merfolk Looters. And this probably doesn't work in the GP top 8, but, like, in Moto 8-4s, like, every single time. Like, if I'm, like, 6 white cards into a draft, then I can go into white-red with a pretty strong red common. I'm just like, no, gonna be white-blue when I get a Merfolk Looter 6-pick next pack. Might as well just take the white card. So I sort of missed that, and that's like very selfish. Like, obviously the reason I was doing that is other people were not taking the Merfolk Looters, so I can't say that like this is what most people's perspective on the format was. But I miss that. I miss blue being a good color a lot more than I thought I would. And the reason is blue sort of does more fun things. It has more intricate lines, just the cards, like Switcheroo. It has like Archaeomancer. It has these weird cards which do interesting things. And I feel like blue throughout the history of Magic has been a color that's difficult to play, but in the hands of somebody super into finding the right line and getting the right advantage, it's the best color. And I don't feel that way about blue anymore. And it leaves me in a rough spot because I was that guy who liked drafting blue. And now I'm like trying to draft green and trying to like make Roaring Primadox really cool so that I can actually do something in green as opposed to just attack with 4/4s, which is okay, but I don't know, it's not super compelling. I'm a little bit lost in M13 right now, I guess is what I'm saying.
You're not happy to be encrusting things?
I don't think I've played Encrust in M13 yet.
Oh, you'll come down to our level soon enough.
Really? Think so?
Join us.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Right.
you'll be down there.
No, I just Primadox every single draft so far because green's real good.
The other thing I wanted to talk about just generally about GP Boston was that it was gigantic. There were over 1,800 people, somewhere 1,800 and some number, not quite 1,900 people. And
Like 1850.
yeah, and that
Yeah,
leads to a situation where, for those who are familiar with Grand Prix, the records that were getting you there in smaller GPs are not getting you there in a GP of 1,850 people. Like, this was a Grand Prix where a bunch of people who were 12-4 did not make the top 64 and did not get any money or pro points. And I'm kind of interested to hear what you guys think about that. Like, should the schedule of the tournament and or the prizes be scaled with the number of competitors, or should it just be like, if 1 million people show up to your event, well, get screwed, like you're in a huge event and that's what you signed up for, so shut your face? Like, I'm going to start with Steven on this because I know he likes to talk about these sorts of things. Steven, how do you
You
feel?
want to start with me on this? All right. There's just like, I mean, my opinion of this is really pretty simple, and it's all super clear to me. So if I don't explain this right, please like tell me what I need to explain more, because it seems so simple to me.
Sure.
But there's absolutely no reason that you shouldn't scale the prize pool based on attendance. It's very simple to do logistically. And the only reason I can think that Wizards could possibly not do it is that it like gets them in legal spots as far as gambling and how they're running a tournament and stuff. That's like I don't understand how you could possibly not want to scale prize with attendance. Not even a little bit. So I don't even know where to start with arguments. Like, can somebody tell me why you wouldn't do that?
I mean, legal issues is the only thing that comes to mind to me because,
Yeah.
I mean, your answer is exactly what I was going to say. It's just scaling is just very easy to do. It seems like, and it just takes all the headaches away from everyone who is like, I went X and 4 and I got 68th. I hate this. I hate the world and all this stuff. It just takes the headache away and all the complaining, everything. But it has to be a legal thing, right?
Yeah. No.
I guess I could see some merit to the argument of also like, I'm trying to think of like the right word for it, but like some regulating in some ways. Like if all of the tournaments, pay out the same, like you can sort of standardize your costs against your like revenue, and it's a little easier to make all of those calculations. Like I know it is for Star City, like we pay all our tournaments out the same, and we don't have to do new math every time we run a new event. Like the only things that change are variables like venue and hotel costs and flights and stuff like that. And less variables is always kind of nice. I'm not saying that like this is an obstacle that couldn't be like surmounted. Like obviously it's just you would have to do more work every time. But at the same time, like work is money, like if it's more work each time, then you're also losing value in that way on the tournament. So in some cases, in some way, I basically I can see it being an argument that like this is easier and all of you guys keep showing up anyway, so we're gonna keep doing it this way. Like it's hard to say that like the system's broken when they're getting 1850 and people are complaining like, man, we got screwed over. And it's like, you showed up, man. You paid like your $40 or whatever. Like, if you
But,
thought
like,
that it was a bad system, you shouldn't have shown up. Like,
no, like, if 1850 people are going to show up for M13 Sealed with the, like, tiny-ish, I mean, it's a reasonable price pool, but it's relatively tiny as far as expected
Yes.
value goes on showing up that weekend. If 1850 people are showing up, like, imagine if the prize pool was scaling and there was, like, $10,000 up for grabs for first place, and you already have these 1850 people in a weak field, like people are suddenly going to be flying in from elsewhere in the globe to play in this tournament because you're all of a sudden putting on a big tournament. Once you get the people attending, if you're scaling prizes, it snowballs a lot, I think.
yeah, but it's kind of risky because like that's sort of the thing where it's like this is how it should work, but like that doesn't mean that's how it's actually going to go down, you know. And you have Grand Prix that have like 700 or 600 people or whatever. Like when you contrast stuff like GB Boston with Grand Prix Lincoln, you know, you're like, oh well, it's kind of hard to know what's going to happen. Like you have ideas. Like I didn't expect this tournament to break 1850. I thought it would be like pretty big, but like I was thinking 12 to 14, like somewhere in that range. So 1850 was pretty big, and that was just me like idly thinking about it. Like it's not like I researched the numbers or whatever. I was just like, that's the number I expected. So 1850 is kind of huge, and it's difficult to predict that sort of thing. I think like we see it a lot when they had to develop on the fly how to handle these like large numbers sometimes. There was like that really terrible. I think it was, or I don't remember. Maybe it was like South America, where they just didn't like the tournament went until like 2 or 3 a.m. or something crazy like that. And everyone had to come back at like 7. And that was obviously like not an acceptable way to run a tournament, but they didn't know that they had to run it a different way, so they kind of got blindsided. So there's probably math behind it that we're not aware of as far as like planning goes, but I definitely agree that like the current system is not as favorable for players as it could very reasonably be. And the reasons for that are probably primarily legal and all like somewhat related to logistics, and also like just it doesn't appear to be broken, so we're not messing with it. Like,
Well, get your act together. I think it's broken. I would have flown to Boston.
$10,000. But like that's
sweet.
would you have
People
flown
are
to
gonna
Boston?
watch.
Like, would you have flown to Boston not like without hindsight? I mean, obviously knowing there's 2,000 people there, you're like, all right, well now that the prize pool's like gigantic. But if someone was just like, all right, Corset Limited GP, you want to go? Like, it's kind of hard. Like, where is it? Is the format good? Like, do people like it? Like, it would actually take a fair bit of research on my part to like do that. I'd be like looking at daily, seeing like how many people fire, how often they fire, like if they're ever missed, like stuff like that, to try and figure out if the format's good, to know if it's popular. And even that's like not foolproof, but like that's the sort of weird crap I'd have to go through to like actually know if the format's going to be viable. And then you can just sometimes be in a bad area. Like Star City was in Denver this weekend, and it's like historically one of our lower attending areas, and we got like I don't remember, like 70 more people than we did last time or something like that. But we didn't really expect to get 70 more. We just assumed it would be about the same. So you don't really know what's going to happen.
You're just sort of making me angry. I think your arguments are crap.
I'm not,
You're
no, I agree. I don't think they're good. I'm just saying, like, I can see it. Like, I mean, I am kind of playing devil's advocate. Like, I wish that these tournaments were scaling. Like, it would be way better for me and everyone, and like that would be cool. But
okay, good.
yeah, like there's just I can't understand where it's really hard to justify changing a system that you can't predict completely accurately when you are still getting 1,900 people showing up anyway. Like,
Sed, do you have anything further to say about the number of people who were at the event and the scaling of the prizes thereof? Or should we move on?
Number of people at the event, there were a lot.
Many? Many people?
Many. Okay. There were many people. I did not expect 1,800 people, like Glenn said.
Would you still have gone to the event if you knew?
Yes.
Yeah. That's why
I wasn't there. I wasn't there to do well at the tournament. I was there to promote streaming and all of these other things. I got third place, fortunately, but that's not actually why I went to the tournament. So Mize, like,
You're just
but yeah, I would have gone regardless.
you're just an incredibly talented individual. You showed up to do other stuff, and while you were in the neighborhood, you figured, what the hell, right? Like,
Might as well get down and dirty
yeah, I mean,
with the rest of the people.
might as well. So why don't we cut directly to the chase and go to the segment of the show that probably 70% or more of our viewers have been waiting for, and we can just listen to Cedric monologue about his wonderful tournament experience. Are you ready to go, Ced?
I can if you want me to.
All right. I know it's tough. You're sort of a wallflower, but I think you should really.
I'm not much of a talker.
Yeah, I think the people really want to know what you have to say, so we should let you go.
So like I said, I was there to promote my stream, the stream team, streaming in general. So I got some miles from my dad, and he flew me out there. Whatever. I got my pairings, or they said for the players meeting, and I see I have one buy, and they announced that there's 1,847 people. I want to kill myself. At that point, because I assumed that I had at least 2 buys from winning my PTQ. I found out I have 1, and that actually played a role in my deck building for my sealed deck, and someone much smarter than me, as I look at Steven, can tell me if this is a good idea or a bad idea, but when I was building my sealed deck, there were 2 forms that I could build my sealed deck. I could build my sealed deck being green-white, where I would have like a healthy amount of Silvercoat Lions and like 2 drops, and then like some other good creatures up the scale, but I would be playing like in between the realm of 6 to 10 2-drops, like, and they're all like 2/2s, and 2 of them are Elvish Visionaries, and then like a couple 3s, a couple 4s, like a 5, like 2 5s, a 6, and a 7, and then 2 O-rings and 3 pacifisms. Or I could build the deck that I did build, which was 7 forests, 6 mountains, 4 plains, and then just like my best cards. And then if I drew my mana, I could not possibly be beat. But if I don't draw my mana, and I have no fixing. I don't have a Farseeker or Terramorphic or anything. I have 2 Elvish Visionaries. I'm drawing first every game. Like, because I have 1 buy, and I know that it's going to be 9 rounds plus 1, because they're adding on a 10th one. After they do the cut for 9 rounds, they're having you play a 10th round with your sealed deck. Should that influence the way that I build my deck? Because I have 1 buy and I have to win, and there's 9 rounds plus a 10th? Or should I just build my deck and not care about like any of that?
I don't know how much the buy matters. I think I like the idea of your second deck a little better anyway, because like I said before, I think the format's kind of forgiving to like early stumbles if your cards are strong. So like I wouldn't mind being in the boat of just having the best cards and assuming my opponent's not gonna like turn 1 Torment Soul, turn 2 Dark Favor the crap out of me every game. Like, I'll just assume we get to play Magic for a little while, and if my deck's got a bunch of sweet spells, then I'll probably kill them. Like,
Yeah, I'm inclined to build the second deck in a huge tournament because the power level of the decks you end up playing against at a GP, like the level, if you're playing a daily event on Magic Online and you play against someone at 3-0, your opponent's deck's probably going to be okay, but it could be that they're just like pretty good at the game and they played a bunch of idiots. But if you're playing someone who's 8-0, like their deck has to be nuts. Like, and at GPs there are so many rounds, you're going to play a bunch of players with really good sealed decks, which is why I would be inclined to play the more powerful sealed deck.
Yep.
Yeah.
Are you one of the guys, are any of you guys, I guess, are any of you the guys who ask how many buys your opponent has before you play them? Or had? I was just curious. Because like, I've played against some people who do this. I know like Saito always asked, I'm pretty sure. I remember when I played Saito at a couple GPs and like he always asked me. Like he asked, I played him in like the first round after the buys, and then in like round 6, and in the last round of the GP. And every time he asked me how many buys I had. And the first time I think I told him the truth, and then every other time I just lied and said 3, because like I didn't want him thinking my deck was any better than it actually was. Like,
would you, if you were gonna lie, would you like try and actually trick him, or would you just lie outrageously? Would you be like, I had 8 buys?
I mean, that's also fine. Like, yeah, I prefer to lie like in a believable way, because then I'm like generating more value, because like he actually believes information that's not true, as opposed to like just knowing that I didn't want to tell him. Which I mean, if I didn't want to tell him, maybe that's information. I don't know. I'm wary of being outrageous to people who I think are smarter than me, because I'm like in trying to conceal information, I might give away the wrong information, you know. But I know that if I say 3 buys, he'll just be like, like he might think I'm a slightly better player, but he's not gonna think my deck is like super awesome. Whereas if he finds out I'm a donk with 0, then I might have some problems when he doesn't, kill my early creatures and actually kills my good ones. No.
I think
Stuff like that.
The super simple answer to your question, Cedric, is that the first deck is going to keep on getting worse the more you win with it, and the second deck is going to start getting slightly better actually the more you win with it. So if you're planning on winning the tournament, which you probably want to do, I would definitely take the second. If you're planning on kind of playing for Planeswalker points at 0-5, probably want the first one.
Came to game.
And I flew to Boston just to do a little bit of battling. Staying in at 0-5, huh? You know me all too well. But yeah, I mean, that was like the first dilemma of the tournament. And obviously, I asked a lot of people, like, what would you do, all of this stuff. And, like, I had, like, an Aven Squire sitting on my board and, like, a prized elephant. Because, like, my white splash was for 3 pacifisms, 2 O-rings, and a divine verdict. And then, like, my red cards, I had, like, a Thundermaw Hellkite, and then the rest of my red cards were single red. And then, I had, like, my green cards. So, like, I look at my deck, and, I took the full-time deck building, and I'm just like, I think that, the way this tournament's going to go, if I draw my lands, I don't think I can possibly lose. And if I play like this green-white deck and I draw like 3 bears and 1 pacifism, I'm going to want to fight someone. So I don't think that that's like a good deck to build. And everyone's argument was like, if you just draw your removal, then you'll be fine. Like, what's it matter? And it's like if I draw my removal with both decks, I'll be fine. Like, that's not an argument. I don't think. So I just kept looking at my 3 Silvercoat Lions and just kept going, not like this. I'm not playing this GP like this. So I don't know if that's the right line of thinking or not, but that's just what I did. Had my first buy. Game 1 of the tournament, my opponent had over 900 goblins in play. So that was interesting. That was an auspicious start. Kranko, obviously. And I had... yeah.
I thought he goblin offensive you or something.
Yeah. And I had an Elder Skullworm, and he was, like, visibly frustrated that he had all these goblins in play and couldn't kill me. So for a little while, I was like, I don't think he can kill it. And then he drew an Arms Dealer, and then just blew it away with all the goblins. And I was like, why were you so mad? He's like, I don't know. And I'm like, okay, just unreasonable anger that you have an out in this to your deck. And then, like, I beat him, whatever. Moving along to the tournament, I'll just talk about like the interesting things that happened during the tournament. Like one round, I'm playing with this guy who I won game 1. Game 2, he's like blue-black, like kind of exalted-y. He has a Nephirox. He's got like some exalted guys, some pretty good removal. His deck seems like it's pretty good. Game 2, he beat the shit out of me, like by just going like Duty Bound Dead, exalted guy, exalted guy, exalted guy, like Bloodhunter Bat, just browned me in like 30 seconds. So I'm like, I am not sure, like, my deck needs to draw first because of the mana, but I'm just like, I can't draw first against this guy if he does that again. So I board in, like, an additional land. I board out my Spake Baloth for my Jamedome's Tomb, and I choose to play first. And he is not American. He has, like, an accent. I'm not really sure where he's from. But game 3, I'm on the play, so, like, I play, like, land go, whatever. And he goes, turn 2 Fogbank, turn 3, like, he goes, turn 2, Augur of Bolas, miss, turn 3, Fogbank. And on turn 4, I play my 4th land, I play Jamedome's Tomb, and he goes, oof.
That's awesome.
And he goes, good card. And I'm like, oh, this is good. I think he's going to lose very badly now. And he draws his card for the turn, and he goes, good sideboard plan. And so every turn, because I have infinite removal in my deck, I'm just like, draw a card, kill your guy, draw your card, kill a guy, draw your card, kill a guy, and I'm destroying him. And I have like 8 cards in my deck, left in my deck, and he's still at 20. So you see the problem here is I've drawn no way to kill him. And so now it's like getting kind of dicey, because like, while he can't really kill me, like decking is realistic like thing, and so now the whole time I'm just hoping he doesn't have Sansalarium in his deck, or like Vidalcan Entrancer. And then like I finally draw like a Basswood Gorge and he switcheroos it, and I'm like, okay, that's like one of my 3 ways to win. So now I'm down to 3 cards in my deck. And the 3 cards are the combination of Elder Scale Worm, the Beast Tracker, which can search for the worm, and Thundermaw Hellkite. And like I have some idiots, and he doesn't really have anything, but he's at like 26 from something. So I'm like getting like pretty worried that I'm in a deck here. And like like Elder Scale Worm is the first kind of draw, which it needs to be, and then Beast Tracker, and then like he's trying to figure out how not to die, and he doesn't remember that I cast Thundermaw Hellkite game 1, and I know it's the last card in my deck. And so he's just tanking forever when he's like at 7. And he just like does something, and he says go, and I just take the top card of my deck and just slam it into play tapped. And he's like, ooh. It's like, I forgot about that, you win. And I'm just like, yes!
Sounds like a sweet opponent. Like
He was awesome to play against. Absolutely fantastic. So that was one of the rounds. I had a feature match against Jason for day 1, which was a lot of fun. And I guess you guys could hear us at home. Is that true, Adam?
Yeah, I was complaining about it on Twitter. Yes, I could hear you. You could hear the players somewhat. It was a little bit quieter than the commentators, but if you had the sound on the coverage, if you were suffering that indignity, you could in fact hear the players.
Okay. Well, Jason, I didn't know that they could hear us. And Jason Ford and I are pretty good friends, and we were just like swearing back and forth at each other. And like, I was just calling him an Asian piece of shit who couldn't see. And like back and forth because we're such good friends. And I had no idea that they could hear us. And he was just playing it back at me. He's just like, yeah, what's it like to be able to lose someone with these beady little eyes? And we were just dying the whole time. And then Ben Schwartz is like, guys, you know they can hear you, right? And I'm like, oh no, I did not know that. So that was if you guys were offended by that, we're sorry. We were just joking. But that was one of the games that we played. Jason Ford is so awesome. That match happened, and then I lost 2 in a row. Got crushed in one of them by just like a black-white deck that had like no rares, and he just destroyed me. He just had like some removal and stuff, and he just absolutely murdered me. I think he went 9-0 on day 1, and then lost to another guy who finished like 12th in the Grand Prix, and then I played Matt Nass and completely destroyed him. And then day 2, like the white drafting happened, where I didn't want to do that. When I was taking a shower in the morning, because I talked to myself, because I'm a psychopath, I was talking about what I wanted to do in when I wanted to draft. And the only thing I kept saying to myself was, just don't have planes in your deck. Nothing else matters, just don't have planes in your deck. And so the first pack I opened has Sarah Angel and 14 pieces of cardboard. So I can't take anything else. So I take Sarah Angel, and then I get past like some white cards, and I just have to be white. And then I'm white-blue, and my deck is really good because Sublime Archangel is a hell of a card. And I end up winning the pod that had me, Finkel, AJ Soccer, Paul Reitzel, and Corey McDuffie. Just like a pod where I'm just far and away not the best player. But like some things broke my way, and I didn't have to play one of the good players until until round 3. I had to play against Corey round 3 in a feature match, so I dodged Finkel and Reitzel, thank God. And the next pod, once again, don't want to have planes in my deck, and I open Odric, so I have a choice again. Yeah, I know this is a rough life, Steven. I see you shaking your head.
Yeah.
It's very tough to
It's
open
hard.
up basic rares.
It's like the story of Oliver Twist.
Yeah, tales from 6-0 day 2 of a GP.
It's not. Yeah. So then I'm green-white, which I don't like drafting because it's just all idiots. But I did have some removal, so that's kind of nice. And I like win my first round, second round. Oh, my first round opponent in that pod when I was green-white, he said, and I quote, I had a lobotomy before the draft. So I didn't know if he was posturing and was like trying to make his deck seem like it was not good. But no, he wasn't lying at all. His deck was absolutely atrocious. So that was nice. So I beat that guy, and then I played against Shaheen Saroni in a feature match, and I lost game 1, and then game 2, he almost downpoured me out of the GP, out of top 8, with like back-to-back downpours. So that would have been a nice way to go out. And then game 3, he like just kept a bad hand and lost. And then what most people have been messaging me about was my match against Dan Jordan, which I don't know if you guys got to watch that, but that is one of the best matches of Magic, win or lose, that I have been a part of in years. like years. That was just the most fun. The games were super competitive, back and forth. If I would have lost, I don't even think I love Dan, so I wouldn't even have been mad if I lost. And it was very obvious that neither of us want to lose playing for top 8, even though we're friends. But that match was just the most back and forth match. Every turn mattered, every decision mattered that I've played in a very long time. So if you guys did not get to watch that match, definitely watch it. It was a hell of a lot of fun. And then top 8, my deck was really good. I got a good read on the table, and I beat Shouta because I outdrew him, even though he's 3,000 times better than Magic. So that was nice.
We drew some good ones in that match. It was...
I assume you watched it home, Adam, because I know you have a fridge. But the thing that kind of summed up my weekend or whatever is when he duressed me on turn 3, and my hand was like pacifism, 4th land for Talrand's Invocation, and like something else, and he like took the Talrand Invocation, and then I my other Talrand's Invocation, and you can't get like anything out of Shouta, and he just glared at me. It was just like, my deck's good? I don't know what to say about this. And then, timely draws, whatever, drew some Bog Banks, drew some lands by pacifisms. I think I captained the Watchdom that game, whatever.
Yeah, twice. That happened.
I don't mind. Summon's a good card. But yeah, I won that match, and then I lost to Mr. Victory, who you know, Glenn Jones.
Yes.
Have you talked about him yet on here today, or no?
No, we haven't.
Tell the people.
Well, Bobby Victory, as I have come to know him, he actually is a WoW TCG player and a pretty competitive one, and I first met him at Dark Moon Fair Charlotte. I don't know if that was his first WoW tournament, but Dark Moon Fairs are basically the equivalent of Grand Prix, and it was a limited tournament. So it was, like a limited Grand Prix for a WoW TCG, and I saw some guy named Robert Victory on the sheets as I'm like picking feature matches to cover, and I'm like, oh, this is awesome. I gotta like get some of this action, obviously. Any coverage person who sees this name is like instantly like catnip to it. And wouldn't you know it, like he actually is winning, and it turns out he's knows some of the other like good players in that area, like Andy Farrell and Andy Huang, which no one who's listening to this thing will probably know, but they're also good WoW TCG Limited players. And Bobby makes top 8 of the tournament, and then crushes everybody and just wins. Like wins the first tournament I ever saw him at, and his last name is Victory. It's just Bobby Victory wins the tournament. It's like, wow, that was pretty awesome. And Bobby won a few WoW Limited GPs over his tenure. I think he's won 2 and top 8'd like 4 or something like that. But I knew that he knew how to play Magic. A lot of the WoW guys do because the games are very similar, and most of them are people who like left Magic and then found WoW TCG and started playing it. That's just like the crowd, I guess, for the most part. So I actually saw him at Indianapolis for Gen Con, where they were on some WoW TCG events. I had no idea he was even playing in this tournament until Matteo Orsini-Jones like just tweeted, it would be awesome if Robert Victory won or something like that. And I was like, Bobby's playing? What? And I go to the standings. He's like 13-1. And I'm just like, geez, like, oh my God. So then the top 8 had so many horses for me at that point because like obviously rooting a little bit, for Cedric, Bobby Victory, Jason Ford, maybe there's someone else. I mean, Brian DeMars, the Star City writer, so like I'd like to see him win. I don't know DeMars super well. We've met at a couple events, but I know he's not. Yeah, he's a good guy. Like, so it was a cool top 8 to watch unfold, and it just sucked that your bracket had literally everybody I wanted to win the tournament basically.
Yeah, no kidding.
No horse v horse in the finals, I guess, for the most part. But yeah, I was very happy to see Bobby make it. Although I thought his top 8 deck was pretty interesting. the old triple tormented soul, Sands of Delirium unit deck. But
yeah, well, I caught the full face of it. Trust me, I got every which way of it. So, Bobby, a little backstory. Apparently, and I'm not sure that I believe this. This is his first Grand Prix or like first Magic tournament, and then like he won buys on Friday night, and I don't know, he wasn't dumb, so I don't believe this is his first tournament or anything. He seems like he's pretty proficient at playing Magic. But when I'm playing against him, he sits down and he's like, yeah, watch you play against Shot, your deck's retarded. I'm like, yeah. And he's like, my deck's terrible. And once again, I am always wary for posturing. And once again, my opponent was not lying.
No.
That's not good. So one of the things that I know that my deck is a little bit weak to is anyone who drafted Tormented Souls in the draft. Just blue-white is naturally weak against that. You know, you have to have passives or O-rings or unsummons or whatever, but you can't block it. A nice fog bank idiot. Like, you just can't do anything about it. So, game 1, he goes turn 1, Tormented Soul. Turn 2, Tormented Soul, Tormented Soul. This is the worst case situation for me right now. And the next turn he puts Volcanic Strength on 1, and it's business time. And I'm getting crushed badly. And I have to go through these hoops to be able to deal with this, which is like, you know, unsummon 1, Essence Scattered on the way back down, peel Pacifism for the next one, and then I'm starting to stabilize a little bit, and I can tell Yes'em burn his hand between Chandra's Fury and Essence Drain, and I'm about to come back and win the game the very next turn with my Fairy Invaders. And I'm at 3, and he draws his card, and he attacks his Tormented Soul, and he goes, sorry, man, sign and blood you. God damn it. All right. Good beats, Bobby Victory.
I've been on the other end of the Bobby Victory apology as he kills me.
Yeah.
And he means it too. He's like, this sucks. Like, that's rough.
Sucks, you're dead. I'm like, all right. And then game 2, you know, I go to the sideboard, and I'm assuming that he's red-black. He probably has some other cards besides Tormented Souls in his deck, so I go reach for the Kraken Hatchling and, like, the Primal Clay in case he has, like, a Blade Tusk Boar. You know, I reach for the old boys that I think would be good against him. The Incrust to stop his Volcanic Strength Tormented Soul. And then game 2, of course, Tormented Soul, turn 1. Volcanic Strength, turn 2. Servant of Nephrox, turn 3. I'm taking the beats. And I have the Unsummon in my hand. I need to find the Essence Scatter to counter it back on the way down. And I find it. And I have to take it. I have to take the hit from the Tormented Soul and then unsummon it on his end step so I can counter back on the way down. And so I take it, unsummon it, and then it's like, oh yeah, cast Sands Delirium. And I look at my hand, and I have nothing. And I look at my board, and I have Kraken Hatchling and Fog Bank in play. And at this point, I know that I'm on a 1-outer of my Encrust, and I'm just dead. Like, who are we kidding? It's just over. But I was just, like, looking at that. I was thinking of what happened game 1 and what happened the first 5 turns of game 2, and he's just like, and when he casts it, he's just like, this is kind of embarrassing, Sands Delirium. And I'm like, this isn't embarrassing at all. I can't win now. And, yeah, I get milled out, I die, and I can't even be mad. Like, you can't be mad when you lose that. I'm just, like, laughing maniacally. It's like, I'm on a 1-outer, your deck is bad, and you weren't lying, and now I'm being milled out, and, well, I had 1 bye, for fuck's sake. Good beats. So, I lose that. I lose, I get knocked out, and, I mean, at the end of the day, I had 1 bye, 6-0 day 2, I made top 4 and $1,500, and the stream team shirt was all over coverage. Could I possibly be upset? No, of course not. And MJ, my room for this tournament, I don't know if you guys knew this, was Brian DeMars, myself, MJ, and Conley Woods. First,
Nice.
third, 11th, and 40th in an 1,800-person tournament. So it was a pretty surreal weekend. I don't think if you could draw it up or write a story any better. I don't think I could have drawn something up out of my head outside of me winning the tournament, or like MJ and I playing the finals. And round 15 of 16, MJ was under the camera playing for top 8, and I was in the written feature match playing for top 8 with Stream Team shirts on. So, like, are you kidding? This was the best goddamn thing that could happen for me this weekend. But yeah, I mean, everyone who watched, I mean, Adam, for you watching at home with the volume on, thank you. I know that's asking a lot, so thank you for doing that. Just everyone who watched the coverage and was, like, rooting for me and everything, many, many thanks. It was as surreal as it seemed, and I just got back, like you guys know. Just got back to the airport, and it was one hell of a ride, one hell of a weekend. I wish I would have won, because I think I had the best deck in the top 8, but even though I may have had the best deck, that doesn't mean you're guaranteed to win. And all things considered, I drew like a fucking god against Shouta. So, I mean, it kind of goes both ways, right? Like, I may have had the best top 8, but I had to draw fantastic against the best player in the top 8 to beat him, because he's a much better player than I am, too. So, that's it. That's all for my rambling, as far as the tournament went. Yeah, that's all I have to say.
Yeah, that one game against Shota where you had like you had 2 fog banks and you just got them both, and I thought you were like 100% dead, and then you just played this 2-1 his deck could never beat. You were just
Yeah.
like 2-1 protection from your entire deck, and he had just like turned to slag something last turn, and he like visibly was crushed when you played the Night of Glory. That was pretty brutal.
It it was kind of weird. Xiaota is kind of thought. I don't want to generalize it, but in my mind, he's kind of thought of like an emotionless player. Like you know, you don't really get anything out of him when you're playing against him and stuff. And there were some times, like there was the I think there was game 1 where like he attacked into me with his muck waiter, and I blocked with Captain of the Watchdog, and he regenerated his guy. And I was like, ooh, he made a mistake? I'd never seen him do that before. That was weird. And, like, you know, like you said, when I played the Night of Glory, he was, like, visibly upset. And then when he duressed my tolerance invocation, I mean, I don't know who wouldn't get upset, to be fair. But, yeah, there was just, like, some he was, like, visibly frustrated and, like, some other stuff. And I guess I didn't really expect that from someone like who's been a player of the year and is just like that good. And you know, he's going to the Players Championship this weekend, and I was kind of thrown aback just about like him, like seeing emotional responses out of him. Someone I consider to be kind of a robot, and you're not going to get like any information out of him, that sort of stuff. But I mean, the brain was really working over the weekend for me, which was kind of nice. So I could kind of get an idea of what was in his hand, which is really relatively difficult to do. So that was kind of nice. I know that one of the things a lot of people have asked me, and this is kind of the last thing I'll talk about as far as the tournament went, was in game 1 against him, when I played Captain of the Watch, I just started blocking immediately when I was at 12 life. And something just like in my psychotic head just told me that like he'd be able to kill Captain of the Watch, and then he would challenge his Fury like my whole entire board. And so like I just started blocking like immediately, just like save damage. And I felt like I was gonna kill him with flyers, and then like I floated out and didn't draw anything. But just like there was something like the way he was playing that just made me feel like some sort of like information that he gave away, which I don't think he would normally give away. That just made me feel like he'd like be able to essence train my captain, which I found out like over the course of the match he had 2 of those, and like a spear and a murder. So he'd be able to like kill it and then like fury like all my stuff, and I would just die. So like I was just blocking from 12, which just looked dumb. But I like had a reason, and it didn't end up mattering because like I flooded and I lost. But like I don't know if like he was off his game, or maybe I was on my game, or like, you know, maybe I'm just looking at things way too much. But I was just really like overall surprised to be able to get any information out of him when I was playing against him. So it was cool. It was a really cool experience.
Do you, Glenn or Steven, do you guys have any questions for the Master while we're on the topic?
Master.
You know, I if you don't remember the game well enough, then I won't want to like drag you through it. But do you remember game 1 against Dan Jordan? This is the only moment of the GP I watched at all.
Yep, and you're probably going to ask me about the block when he attacked with all 3 of his creatures?
Yep.
I'm not saying your block is wrong. I don't like it at the moment, but I wanted to know like if you would walk me through like why you wound up blocking the way you did. Like the block, I can say the block I would like first, and then I guess you can say. Because the board, for those who weren't aware, was Cedric had a tapped Arbor Elf, a Crusader of Odric, and a Sentinel Spider. And Dan slams in with Crimson Muckwader, and he does have a swamp. He has 4 mana at the time, I believe. Goblin Arsonist, and Mog Flunkies. And the block I prefer in the situation was Crusader of Odric on the Flunkies and Sentinel Spider on the Goblin Arsonist. And the block that you made was the Sentinel Spider on the Flunkies and the Crusader on the Arsonist. So basically like the flip of my block, like preserving a different creature. Okay, so I was just curious why you went with that one.
I do remember that, and looking back on what I was thinking about Dan had at the time, and this is just going to sound stupid because now like it just gets my whole entire team killed, was Challenger's Fury. And the way that I blocked gets my whole entire team killed by it.
Okay.
So like there was a lot of things going through my head at that point, because that was like the one turn of the game that mattered.
Yeah.
And like looking back at the block now, like obviously the way I'm thinking about Challenger's Fury the entire time, and then like a lot of other things are racing through my mind as well about just like the trick that he can have. And so like Challenger's Fury is at the forefront of my brain, and then like a lot of things are racing through my brain as well. And then like I just made the block that I made, and I mean, looking at it now, like Challenger's Fury is going to kill all my guys, so like that block's pretty bad. If like I'm assuming that it's Challenger's Fury, and like MJ told me like after the match, he's like, well, you know, why didn't you block this way? I didn't really have a good reason then, and truthfully, I don't really have a good reason now. And like looking back at that, like it ended up like I had to peel to beat the Bloodhunter bat. So like Glenn, like I think that your block is better, and I don't really have like a good reason that like why the block that I made is better. Like it comes down to it's just like a bad block, and I can't really think of the reason that I blocked that way. Like I was trying to think of like how I was going to beat him that game, and like I know I had some cards in my hand that was going to make Crusader bigger and put it into a 4/4.
Yeah.
I mean, like overall, like it's like Spider's like better than anyway because like it has vigilance, it can block a Bloodhunter bat if he has one, it can handle a Muckwader. Like it's just a better card there anyway, and I was just probably like probably undervaluing Spider and overvaluing Crusader when like Spider's a better card anyway.
That was kind of what I was thinking. I mentioned this like beforehand to Adam and Steven, and I was saying like I think Crusader has to get to like 6/6 or 7/7 before he starts being actually better than the Spider a lot of the time. Like he has to like just being a little bigger isn't enough. He has to be like huge because Vigilance and Reach are just such a good combination. So okay, I mean that makes sense. Like obviously it's like round 3,000 or something. Like how many were there?
Yeah, it's round 16. But I mean that's I don't really consider it to be excuse. I think like
no, I mean
I thought about the turn for like a pretty long time because it was like the most relevant for the game at that point. And like you said, like I can't remember what was running through my mind exactly at that point in time. I know the thing that I thought about the most was Chandra's Fury, and the way that I blocked played me into Chandra's Fury, the card I was thinking about the most. So that makes me look like an idiot. Like right now as I'm discussing, I feel stupid. I mean, I top board. Who cares?
Yeah. Scoreboard.
Yeah. I mean, what I realistically think that happened right then is like there were a lot of things that could go through my mind because like the way that the rapport that Dan and I had going to the match is we were having a lot of fun back and forth, and then the fun stopped immediately when we had to think about something, and so like we were like having fun back and forth, and then that turn happened and he just stopped. And so then I had to stop. And then he attacked with all of his guys, and then I had to stop and just think about everything that he can have, because he has 3 cards in his hand, and I'm thinking about all the cards that I passed during the draft, and like how many copies of each card I passed during the draft, and like what block is going to be good, what block is going to be bad, what's going to happen for the rest of the game, like what cards can I draw to. So obviously a million things are going through my head, and like Chandra's Fury is at the forefront of my brain, but like there's a lot of things that are going around it as well, going and then like I finally just came to like my block, and then like if it's Fury, my block is bad, and if it's not Fury, my block is like kind of bad too, because like I lose the Spider and then he plays the bat post combat, and I don't have an answer to the Spider, and I have to be able to prey upon one of my 2 prey upons, like my O-ring, or like my Aven Squire or something. So I think just overall it's just not a good block, truthfully. Okay. But I mean I make no claims to playing perfect Magic either, so
I mean, I should hope not.
I really appreciated that insight into your thought process.
I like the screaming dialogue. That was good.
Yeah. There's just a lot of... You should have seen me when I was top 8 drafting. I was rocking back and forth when I was drafting the entire time. Because, like, during the draft, I first picked the Sentinel Spider, and I got past Talron's Invocation, and there was an uncommon missing. So immediately my brain goes, it has to be Flames or it has to be Nighthawk, because who on earth is passing Talron's Invocation? Like no one can be that dumb. So like now it's just like, okay, I'm definitely gonna get past blue cards, like for sure. Like this guy's not gonna like pass cut me, I don't think. Especially like the uncommon that he took has to not be blue. So like this draft, I'm like, okay, like I have a Sentinel Spider and I have a Talron's Invocation. Now my brain is going. But first my brain goes, it's either Nighthawk or Flames. Then my brain's going, you don't want to be blue green. You don't want to be blue green. So. Like, the packs are coming, and I'm not seeing any cards of any color except for blue. And then, like, 9th or 10th pick comes around, I see a Farseek and a Healer of the Pride. And Healer of the Pride should just not go that late. So, now I'm thinking of the Spider I have, and I think of the Rootbound Crag that I picked up the last pick, so now I'm thinking to myself, blue-green splash red if I get past the Flames, or, like, a Spear is, like, a thing. And then I'm thinking to myself, like, but why is this Healer here? So, like, I think for, like, DI... And then I just take the Farseek because, like, I have the Spider and maybe, like, I haven't seen any green cards this way. So, like, I'm passing to Demars, and I know Demars doesn't ever draft green. So, like, I can probably get green cards coming this way, pack 2. And then I open up Aven Squire Acidic Slime, pack 2. And so now my brain is going, again. But now it's going, you definitely don't want to be blue-green. This Acidic Slime is tempting, but you definitely don't want to be blue-green. But, like, you didn't see very many white cards, but there's an Aven Squire. And you just passed Healer, like, 10th to Demars. So, like, maybe just no one's drafting white or blue. So I go to time on the pick and I take the Squire, and then Demar's passes me Pacifism, and then it just all goes perfect. But like my brain just goes a million miles an hour, like when I'm thinking, and just like a lot of things are going back and forth. And then there's a lot of people watching the draft, and I'm just rocking. So I'm sure everyone thinks I'm just a fucking psycho, and they're right, because I am. But I'm rocking back and forth as I'm drafting. I'm just thinking of a million different things all at once. So, long story short, things can get a little complicated up here. They can get a little complicated upstairs. So, that could be the explanation for my bad block against Stan Jordan. My saving grace.
Steven, do you have anything for?
But like, you and I are very different players of Magic. Like, I'm so much more deliberate than you are. And I don't know, I just think it's interesting to see, like, you can instantly play stuff, and it's generally good. I think that you instantly played some pretty bad misplays in, like, the times that I was watching. I think turn 2 in the top 8, you could have pacifismed his walking corpse, and with your hand, I think it was just, like, clearly right. And we just, like, didn't even think about it. And I would have, like, at least thought about that. So, I don't know. That's sort of puzzling to me. It's not something you necessarily need to respond to, but it's really interesting to me how people, like, I think you've played a ton of live Magic, and it's very clear to you what line you would normally take, and you just do it, and that's fine. In poker, there are guys who just do instinctively what they first think of, and sometimes they make stupid mistakes, but they're also really, really good players, because instinctually, like, you turn on parts of your brain that you don't if you're tanking. So that was interesting. And it was interesting that you were, like, playing so quickly before the top 8, and then once we got to the top 8, you were a little more deliberate. Like, I don't really know where I'm going with this.
No, it's
I'm
actually
fascinated by brains.
It's like a thing that a lot of people ask me, because there are sometimes when I play like ridiculously fast, and then when I'm in top 8s, I play ridiculously slow.
Right.
And I don't. The one thing that you said is definitely true. Is like I'm the kind of person who, when something hits my head, I feel like it hit my head for a reason, and then I trust it. Because what I have found, like over the course of, especially my live playing career, is like something hits my head immediately, and then I think things through a lot, and then I would like overthink myself, and then just do something like that is just wrong. So like the only reason that like I do the things that jump into my head quickly is because like over the course of time that I've been playing Magic, that has been correct more than it has been incorrect. Now that's not to say that everything that I'm gonna do instinctively is correct, of course. But the things that jump into my head, like I have like basically found with myself, is like the thing that jumps in my head first is the thing that I should trust the most. As far as your pacifism on Walking Corpse, I definitely thought about that. Like when I untapped and drew my card, like I know that like I played my turn like pretty quick that turn, but like I definitely thought about it, and then I also thought about like the other cards that are in my deck, like between like the 2 Fog Banks, I have Tolerance Invocation in my hand that would be able to like trade with it, or if like he attacked with a Exalted guy, would just double block and trade with it. Like I was okay taking like a couple hits from it, you know, because I had seen a decent amount of Shalta's deck, and I knew that Muck Waiter was like a pretty big problem for me. So I want to save at least one pacifism for that, and then like if he did have like some sort of tormented soul bullshit, like I just didn't think that I wanted to cash in that pacifism right away. I thought that like realistically, I think 2 hits were going to be okay. You know, I don't know if he's the kind of guy that would play a Dark Favor or Volcanic Strength and kind of bolster it or something like that, but I felt like at least 1, maybe 2 hits were going to be a reasonable thing. Do you remember if I had Guardians of Cross in my hand at that point or not? I feel like I probably didn't.
Pretty sure you didn't.
Okay. I mean, that was another card that I could draw to. It just felt like playing pacifism then just didn't feel right to me. But at the same time, like, I just want to make the game go as many turns as possible, so that accomplishes that too. So I can see where your line of play comes in as well.
Right. I just thought it was like, it just seemed clearly better to me. You know, I play Magic very deliberately, but in poker I'm playing like 24 tables at a time, over 1,000 hands per hour, and I've gotten to the point where I can like be consciously thinking that I'm going to make a play, and my subconscious brain clicks a different button before I do it. So you can like, yeah, your subconscious can do some fucking scary things. I think it's right when it does it.
Yeah, it's
I
it's very
I
strange.
agree. When I first started like playing, deciding like I wanted to try and PTQ and stuff like that, which I didn't like early on do Magic like really competitively. I liked being like one of the guys who won in my store. I didn't like trying to qualify for the Pro Tour. So like as I tried to get better, one of the things I started doing was generally trusting the things that I just thought were real, you know? Like when I thought I had a read, I just decided to trust it, which was like a conscious decision because I mean, realistically, if my read's wrong, like I need to figure out why my reads are wrong and, you know, get punished for it. But if my reads are right, like what's the point of having them if you can't ever trust them, you know? So I think that was like a big part of my development was just learning to go with things. I know Jerry and I have actually talked about like I had a really weird board situation actually playing Moto. I played against some zombies guy and in game one he Black Sun Zenith me when I was playing Delver. Which is like, who runs that in their zombies deck? I was so confused. And
Seen
then in the
that.
second game, I was like about to slam Geist and he was on the play and I had a Delver already flipped in play and I'm just like he must be only running like one, maybe two or something. And I just had like the feeling he had to that he had it, you know, like just this unshakable sensation. He definitely has the Black Sun Zenith. And this story is kind of a bad example because I slammed my Geist and he slammed his Black Sun Zenith and like I got kind of blown out. But like I'm just seeing in the moment and you know like there was no real like super rational reason for me to know it, but like just something about it. Like maybe the cards he played, like he hadn't played a 1-drop or a 2-drop, and then he played like some junker on turn 3 that he probably hadn't had in his opener. It's like I'm just, you know, all of that information like is building towards me somehow thinking that this is like the most likely scenario. But like not consciously going over all of the stuff, my brain just, you know, came to the conclusion, Black Sun Zenith. And I just ignored it. So I think that kind of stuff like is huge. Like you said, Steven, your subconscious can definitely examine all kinds of things. And regarding pace of play, I think that's a really interesting topic too. I don't know if we have like a lot of time to go into it. And I don't even know if it's a topic that can be like delve, but there's a ton of interesting stuff. One of the things I just want to say is I think it's like really important to have a pace of play, like that you have a pace you are comfortable with and aware of, because getting forced into like a bad pace is really disruptive to your thought process. Like if you have an opponent who's playing fast and you're like trying to keep up with him, like that's horrible. You're probably going to make mistakes and he's going to get an advantage. One of the things I'm known for is playing like I'm pretty deliberate like you, Steven, and I've won a lot of games that come like close to time or like as the buzzer hits, but I've gotten very few unintentional draws in my lifetime, like probably low double digits, if even that. Like, so I'm very aware of the clock, and I've just arrived at that like comfortable pace. This is how I'm gonna do it. This is the pace I'm gonna play at, and like I think it's a valuable skill, and it pays off a lot.
A lot of people play very quickly and then stop and think, and then I know exactly what their entire hand is.
A lot.
And
That's
it's
good.
Yeah, so don't do
That's
that.
that's kind of the reason. That's part of the reason I play pretty fast. Because like against Dan, we were like having a lot of fun, obviously, like back and forth. But like when he tanks on a turn, it's not like fake tanking. You know, it's not like the fake tank. Like it's very clear you have something now at this point. And I've been playing like relatively quickly for like a really really long time. But you know, if like someone like is playing like at a very slow pace, I can match it, but I'm not comfortable at it, and it'll like kind of frustrate me a little bit. For those of you who play against me in the future, like I like controlling the pace a lot, and I like to be talkative and like do a lot and like do that sort of stuff to like kind of exert control over the match and like where it's gonna go, and like you know like I say a lot of stupid shit during a match, like just to chatter and like just to get them to feel comfortable, because like I feel like a lot of people just don't play that way. You know, like I just say things. Like even if they just don't make sense, I just say stuff.
Me
and like
too.
I just make noises. Like I'll just like start whistling at the table. I take my shoes off when I play. I just do things that just are just dumb, like just to do them. And like it's not like I've like schemed and like planned these things out like scientifically. It's just like I just get really comfortable like when I'm playing, like I'd be playing here like in my bed or something, and you know I'll be whistling and like twitching and just doing just dumb crap and just talking shit, and just I just get comfortable, and it makes other people uncomfortable, which like it's small, but like it can lead to like something positive for me. So I just do things, and I don't know, it's just like who I am. I mean, people seem to enjoy it, but like I feel like for Dan and I, like the banter, like our match especially, like the banter was like very good back and forth. It was a very entertaining match. I enjoyed every minute of it. But I feel like I drove the pace in that match. Like I was driving the car, and like I would like if I'm playing against Dan for it to always be like that. Because I feel like I'm like establishing everything. So, yeah, I think that was just like the one. Yeah, because someone brought it up in the chat, like pace of play. Sure.
All right. I wanted to give people in the audience the chance to address questions to, I guess, anyone, although I suspect most of them will be for Cedric specifically. But so if you guys have any fascinating questions, feel free to put them in chat and we'll try and sort of screen through them and pick out some interesting ones. But while we give people a chance to get interesting stuff in chat, I want to talk really quickly about the cards which have been previewed for the new set for Return to Ravnica. Since I saw that, I know I saw that, and I know a bunch of people have been asking about it in the chat. I don't know exactly how much there is to talk about it, but if you guys just want to give like your super quick impressions of it, I know Glenn, you said you'd seen it, so I will let you go first.
Sure. I want to say that I think these are excellently chosen cards on Wizards' part because they are all interesting or exciting in some way and show off the right kind of stuff. And obviously we know that they're good at this and they have people whose job it literally is to pick things that will be exciting and not show you, you know, the improved Angel's Mercies or whatever. But these cards are sweet. I like a lot of them and they all seem pretty interesting to me, like just scrolling through them. I'm using the Star City Games.com Facebook album. I don't know if there's a better one, and I hope it has everything because I didn't update it. So, I guess, do you want me to just like run through each of them and then we'll all talk about them, or I don't know. I can pick one and leave you guys Is It Charm because
Sure.
I think that card's playable, but not like exciting, just cool.
All right, sure, just grab one.
I like Dragmangler. He is sweet. Dragmangler, for those of you who aren't loading up the page right now, or just in case you can't read, I don't know, is a 1 black and a green 3/3 haste plant zombie, and has Scavenge 3 black green. Scavenge is a new mechanic, and it lets you exile the creature from your graveyard to put +1/+1 counters equal to its power on target creature, and you can only do it at sorcery speed. So, cards are obviously like, it draws comparisons to some cards like Boggart Ramgang and such. And as one of those cards, I like it a lot, mostly because it's a zombie. We've already seen like zombie decks splashing green doing okay with Woodland Cemetery, giving them kind of like a free green source. And Dragmangler seems like he can fit into those decks with Cavern of Souls supplying the color fixing while still letting you play Drops Messenger once the format rotates. And he's also awesome late with Scavenge. Like that ability is quite strong. I can see it very easily just turning your guy into like a pseudo lightning bolt later on, and he's already a 1 black green haster, so that's pretty aggressive. I think the card's powerful and it's a good creature type. Zombie being like that creature type, obviously. So I anticipated seeing play, assuming that black and green are like, or more specifically black, I suppose, because I see this more as like a black card that has the condition of you needing green mana to play it, more than a green card that goes in green-black decks. So that's kind of my take on the Dragmangler.
How do you feel about its name?
I think that's a crappy name, but whatever.
Right, so
I mean, like, I don't really, I kind of, like, I mean, a drag is, you know, I guess, like, we've got, like, you know, the various dregs that we've had before. And
Sewer
even
Drag
in,
was the one I was able to come up with. Sewer Drag was the 5-mana 3/3
no, there's also, like,
whatever.
there are, like, similar ones, isn't there? Like, the 2/1 Unearth guy from Shards, is he drag? Dragscape Zombie? Like, he's...
maybe.
Yeah, like, it's just this, like, random word that's, like, zombie associated. And then Mangler, so, like he's a...
Yeah, he
does
doesn't...
he mangle other zombies?
Yeah, he doesn't like those dregs. Like, he gets them. Yeah.
Well, I see, that's the thing, like, that's kind of the way I would take it, but I think it's supposed to be like he's a mangler who is himself a dreg. But, like, it's not super clear, and also,
that.
like, mangling is, like, I don't think zombies are manglers, really, you know? They're, like, I don't know, maybe I'm wrong.
He's just a mangler that's, like, really low on the mangler totem pole?
Yeah,
Okay. I like that interpretation. All right.
I didn't even know a drag could be singular.
Learn something new every day.
Yeah. Ced, do you have a card from the spoilers you wanna run on while we continue to sift through chat for interesting questions?
For show. Goblin Electromancer. I was gonna do Is It Charm, but I am nice. I'm gonna save that for someone else. probably that's more of like Steven's type of card anyway. Goblin Electromancer. The reason I bring this up is the same reason that I brought up Omniscience in my review of M13 of what I thought were going to be the most powerful cards per color on Star City. Electromancer is a very dangerous card. I don't know if there's a deck that exists around it now, and it is a 2/2 creature, but it's just like a lot of creatures that you've seen in Magic, like Lotus Cobra. Sunscape Familiar is sort of a good example. But this, I think Sunscape Familiar is actually a pretty apt example of what it did for like Snap Desire decks. Like if it didn't get killed, it was a medallion. This is the same kind of card. Nightscape Familiar, whatever. Like if there's a deck around this and this card doesn't die, you're dead. That's just it. Just nothing else to say. You're just dead. So if this card is like real and like the format dictates that like it's kind of hard to kill a creature, or like you don't expect like a blue-red like Storm-esque type deck to play this kind of card, this is a very, very scary card with like a ton of potential. There's obviously the other side to it where it could just not be good at all. But when you see a card like this, like when you see a card that has this kind of text on it and one less to cast, or like free to cast like Rooftop Storm or like Omniscience, like those cards are just inherently like makes my, once again, psychotic brain just go like can just be a thing. So I think there's some potential there, like potential for this card. I don't know what it is. I don't know if it's Modern Storm or like Standard Storm, or we don't know the cards, of course, or what's going to be built around it, but it's just something to keep in mind, because like when they printed Omniscience, I don't think a lot of people thought that was going to be a real card, and that card is absurd. So that's it.
I'm a little disappointed he doesn't have the same level of funny hat that Blue-Red Goblins from Ravnica did. Like, if you remember Goblin Flectomancer, or whatever that thing's called. I just always...
funniest hat.
Yeah, I just called him Funny Hat Goblin. That's why I don't know what his actual name is, but he had a pretty sweet hat.
He had the best hat. He looked like a very smart goblin, too.
Yeah, he was serious business.
He was learned. So.
Yeah. I want to touch on the Heat Ray that turns into, like, a bonfire with Overload. I don't know that's how I describe every card, is like in terms of other cards. I don't know the actual names of these Magic the Gathering cards right now, but
Street Spasm.
Okay, I'll take your word for it. It just strikes me as a really interesting card and a really interesting mechanic for limited play, especially. Like, I'm really looking forward to playing with a bunch of cards that have multiple modes, because that's something that seems really fun to me and seems like the way I enjoy playing Magic. And I really want to echo Glenn's point about them previewing a really good subsection of cards that seem really interesting about the set. I think they did a really good job with that, because I think all these cards are sweet. Probably the sweetest is the one that we've left for last, but like all of them are interesting and sort of hint at more interesting stuff, which is going to be in the set. So I think they did a really good job with that. So yeah, Steven, you wanna?
So yeah, as you're hinting, you left Jared, Golgari Lichlord, from
Yes, I did.
No, so Is a Charm is pretty sweet, man. So we have like, okay, way back at the beginning of the show, I was saying like I don't really mind one-ups in a list. Like I see 2 Dismember, 1 Doomblade, and I'm like, whatever. Like you have the different cards, you do different things with them, which one's better, etc., etc. Is a Charm is a card which is different cards on its own, and it's like lots of fairly good different cards on its own. It's going to give you really cool, like very, very cool lines of play. I hope that Goblin Electromancer is not just like, this is some Storm deck, cool. I hope that there's some sort of fish deck